Revealed. The incredible moment a homeless boy's simple request changed a millionaire's life forever. In the heart of downtown Chicago, a shimmering skyscraper cast an enormous shadow over a ragged alley. Nestled between its steel walls was Gabriel, a 10-year-old boy who wore hope like a worn-out coat. His bed was a pile of cardboard, his blankets thin and tattered. But every morning as the sun began to peek above the buildings, Gabriel would wake up and smile. A smile that had the power to light up the darkest alleys. Raised on stories of dignity from his late father, he'd greet the world with warmth, asking passersby for spare change, offering kindness in return. On one particularly frigid morning, while frost clung to the ground and steam curled from the nearby coffee shop, Gabriel noticed Thomas. A reclusive millionaire, clad in a designer coat, his brows knitted tightly as if the world weighed heavily on his shoulders. In that moment Gabriel felt a tug at his heart. Gathering every ounce of courage, he approached Thomas, his little voice barely cutting through the bustling sounds of the city. "Just a minute of your time," he said, his eyes sparkling with determination. Surprised and intrigued, Thomas paused. The brief connection sparked into a deeper conversation as they sat on a nearby bench surrounded by hurried commuters. Gabriel spoke of dreams he barely dared to voice: finding a home, getting an education, and keeping the spirit of his father alive. Through the innocent wisdom of this young boy, Thomas felt something shift within him, a flicker of purpose reigniting amid the ashes of his own success. He began to see life through Gabriel's hopeful eyes, but as their bond grew, so did the judgments around them. Wealthy friends of Thomas scoffed at his newfound compassion, tossing around derisive comments that stung like bites of winter air. Should he abandon the boy who had opened his heart or maintain his societal status? This struggle festered inside him, and before long, a crisis hit the community, overshadowing Gabriel's safety just as trust began to blossom. Suddenly, the streets erupted in chaos, a protest against unfair wages. Gabriel found himself in a dangerous situation, fear creeping into his heart, just as he dared to hope for a brighter future. As the world seemed to teeter on the brink, both Gabriel and Thomas were forced to confront their own darkness. One was scrutinizing what it meant to truly connect, while the other was grappling with survival itself. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As tensions exploded, both men faced the risks of their contrasting lives. Gabriel's inherent wisdom began to shine brighter, pushing Thomas to reconsider a world often blinded by wealth. With a pivotal community event looming, their lives were about to intertwine in a way neither had anticipated. A chance to stand together against economic inequality. As the air thickened with anticipation, could Thomas break free from his world of judgment? Would Gabriel's faith in a better tomorrow hold firm in the face of despair? The questions lingered heavily in the air, leaving their fate suspended in uncertainty. Gabriel's heart raced as he watched the crowd gather, voices rising and clashing like thunder, shaking the very ground beneath him. The protests swelled around him, a sea of anger and hope. Signs waved in the air, some shouting against injustice, some demanding fairness, but for Gabriel, all he saw was chaos. Nearby, Thomas stood rigid, his eyes darting around, assessing the situation. He felt a visceral pull towards Gabriel, the boy who had cracked the wall he'd built around his heart. "I have to find him," he muttered, pushing through the throngs of people. He squeezed past bodies shouting slogans, faces twisted in passion, distraught at the state of their lives. But the deeper his desperation grew, the smaller he felt, as if the weight of the world had deposited itself on his shoulders. What could a millionaire possibly do in the midst of all this suffering? Then he spotted Gabriel. The boy stood at the edge of the protest, his small frame overwhelmed by the towering figure surrounding him. Fear etched on his face, he looked lost, adrift in the chaos. Instinct kicked in, and Thomas rushed toward him, hoping to shield him from the intensity unfolding. "Gabriel!" he shouted over the din. The boy's eyes widened at the sight of him breaking through the crowd. Relief flooded his small frame. But that relief was quickly overshadowed by the tension thick in the air. "Mr. Thomas!" Gabriel exclaimed, his voice barely rising above the shouts and chants. "I was so scared. It just got too loud." "I'm here now," Thomas replied, kneeling to meet Gabriel at eye level. "We need to get out of here. This isn't safe." "But I want to help," Gabriel said stubbornly, his little fists clenched. "People are hurting. They need voices." Caught off guard by the bravery in Gabriel's words, Thomas hesitated. "I know, but you and I can help in other ways. Let us find a place to regroup." Gabriel looked around, uncertainty dancing in his wide eyes. He felt the weight of his father's teachings pressing down. Standing up for what was right. "But if we leave, they'll think we don't care." Thomas, wrestling with the tug-of-war between his desire to protect and Gabriel's fervor for justice, sighed. The boy's passion ignited something within him, a seed of purpose he had long buried under the weight of wealth. "What do you suggest we do then?" "We could talk to them," Gabriel urged, his voice shaking but filled with tenacity. "Help them be heard." The idea sparked a fire in Thomas's heart. He looked at the boy before him, seeing more than just his young face. He saw conviction. Perhaps this was the moment they both needed, nothing less than a chance to change their lives together. "All right," Thomas said, straightening up with determination. "Let us do this." As they moved closer to the heart of the protest, Thomas felt his old life's ideals slip away, replaced by an urgent desire to make a difference, no matter how small. He turned to Gabriel, his newfound ally, and asked, "What's our first step?" Gabriel's face lit up, his fear momentarily vanishing. "We need to listen first. Let us hear their stories." With that, they positioned themselves at the edge of the crowd, listening to the voices filled with pain and dreams. Each tale they heard weighed heavily on Thomas's heart, but also unraveled something deep within his, chance to bridge the divide that had separated him from the very essence of humanity. As they stood there, side by side, a strong bond began to form. Both a homeless boy and a millionaire, two souls entwined with a singular purpose. But as they began to find their footing in this overwhelming world, darker forces loomed on the horizon. Will they be able to push through the tides of dissent and change? Or will life's struggles pull them apart, leaving them lost once more? Everything shifted around them, the pulsating energy of the crowd wrapping itself around Thomas and Gabriel like a heavy blanket. People were pouring their hearts out, sharing their struggles, their frustrations, their dreams of a better life. Gabriel's eyes sparkled, not with fear, but with a fierce determination. For the first time, Thomas felt that life beyond his wealth was not just a burden but a chance for revival. "Listen," Gabriel said, pointing toward a man stepping forward, his voice rising. "He has something to say." 30-year-old Michael had rough hands and tired eyes. His clothes were threadbare, but his spirit burned brightly. "We're not just voices in the wind," he shouted, his words carrying conviction. "We are humans. We have families, dreams. We need help, not pity." Gabriel nodded, leaning in. "Yes, right, Mr. Thomas. Everyone deserves to be heard." "I know," Thomas replied softly, his heart tightening as he watched the man's raw emotion spill forth. "But how do we help them?" Gabriel clenched his fists again, a gesture that had become all too familiar. "We start here. Right now. Can't you see? We need to stand with them." That rawness in Gabriel's voice stung, igniting a flame deep inside Thomas. It wasn't about him or his wealth. It was about giving a voice to those who had been silenced for too long. He nodded, a new fire lighting his spirit. "Okay, what do you want to say?" Gabriel's face lit up, and he stepped into view, fully embracing the moment. "Can I speak?" he called out, catching the attention of onlookers. A wave of silence fell over the crowd as they turned toward him. "Please," Michael encouraged, stepping aside slightly. Gabriel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes locked onto him. "Hello. My name is Gabriel, and I'm here with Mr. Thomas. We want to listen to your stories. We want to help make sure you're heard." The crowd stirred, a mix of surprise and curiosity painted across faces. Could this little boy really care? And a millionaire with him, no less. Thomas stepped forward, adding his voice. "I know I'm fortunate, but that doesn't shield me from the reality surrounding us. We're here to learn from you, to give you a platform. Let us come together." The murmurs grew. a mix of hope and skepticism. Someone shouted, "You think that just saying those words will change anything?" Gabriel paused, knowing the hearts before him were battered. The boy stood still, looking down at the ground. In that moment he felt the enormity of it all. No, it won't. But it's more than just words, I see it? We can create change if we join our voices. Thomas felt a rush of pride surging through him. The boy's bravery, his empathy, something incredible was forming between them. A potential that could tear down walls, and maybe, just maybe, change the narrative of their community. Exactly, Thomas said, his voice nourished by Gabriel's spirit. This is a beginning, right? A sense of collective energy began to build, hope flickering back and forth between Gabriel, Thomas, and the crowd. The exchanges turned into dialogues, as individuals began to share their stories with encouragement. But just as things seemed promising, a loud crack echoed through the air, drawing all eyes away from the heart of the protest. A police officer stood in view, a serious look etched across his face, his presence commanding attention. "You need to disperse. This protest is unauthorized, or I will have to take action." Thomas's heart sank, fear creeping back in. Was this the end of their fragile hope? Gabriel gripped his hand tightly, standing firm beside him. "We can't let fear silence them now," he said, his voice unwavering amid the rising tension. Something awakened in Thomas, an urge to fight for those voices that had finally begun to be heard. Would they stand their ground, or would they retreat once more? As the conflict hung heavy in the air, Gabriel looked back at Thomas, eyes gleaming with determination and a glimmer of defiance. "We can do this, can't we?" How would they respond when the moment of truth arrived? Would they confront the looming authorities or retreat into silence once again? Thomas's heart raced as the officer's warning hung in the air. The energy of the crowd shifted, hope teetering on the brink of despair. All around them, faces that had just begun to light up with the flicker of shared resolve now turned to somber reflections. "Listen to me," Gabriel shouted, his small voice piercing through the tension. "We're here to speak. We're not going anywhere." The defiance radiated from him, a little beacon of resolve in a storm. Thomas felt that spark igniting a fire within him, pushing him to stand taller, to feel every heartbeat in unity with the people standing before them. "Gabriel," Thomas said, instinctively trying to temper the boy's enthusiasm, yet he felt the same urge tugging at him. It was too late to hold back now. Michael stepped forward again, his frame unwavering. "We don't want to fight, officer, but we need to stand up for what is right." His voice was deep and resonated with a conviction that transcended his tattered clothes. It was the voice of desperation, but also of hope. Behind him, a murmur swept through the crowd, like the rustle of leaves before a storm. The officer shifted, his stern demeanor softening just a fraction. "This is illegal," he said, his tone still firm but with hints of curiosity. "Maybe," Thomas admitted, stepping out to stand beside Gabriel. "But it's also human." The words came spilling forth, igniting a sense of purpose he didn't know was there. Life shouldn't be about fear and power. It's about dignity and shared stories. Gabriel squeezed his hand. "If we leave now, no one will remember our stories. We have to be brave." Something shifted. A young woman in the crowd called out, "Yes, right. We deserve to be heard." Others began to echo her sentiments, their voices rising. The fear began to dissolve, replaced by a collective energy, a surge of determination binding them together. As Thomas stood there, his heart swelling, he realized the truth. This was not merely about legality. It was about humanity. Their voices were truths that needed space to breathe. "Okay," the officer finally replied, lowering his tone. "But you need to stay peaceful. No violence." Gabriel raised his fist, a symbol of unity, and without prompting, Thomas followed suit. The movement spread like wildfire. Soon arms were raised and a chant erupted, "We are not invisible. We are not alone." The crowd swelled around them, eyes shimmering with hope and desperation. As they stood there, Thomas could feel the walls he had built around his heart crumbling. He was no longer just a wealthy man observing from a distance. He was part of something bigger, part of a community fighting for their rightful place. Still, a nagging thought tugged at him. What would happen next? The police might be few, but they held power, and the situation could turn volatile in an instant. The last thing they needed was to be pushed into submission again. Gabriel looked up at Thomas, eyes fierce. We need to keep talking. Right here. Right now, he urged, eyes begging for reassurance. The crowd was growing louder, emboldened by each moment. Let them speak. Let us share. Their voices climbed to the sky, raw and full of energy. But would this impromptu unity hold? As excitement bubbled in the air, they faced a defining moment. Would they truly claim their space? Or would fear strike back and silence them once more? Thomas, Gabriel whispered, his voice trembling. What if we fail? Suddenly, the horizon of possibility stretched out before them. But the threat of failure loomed just as large as the promise of change. What lay beyond this fragile moment? Would they step boldly forward together, or would doubt claw its way back in? Thomas felt the weight of Gabriel's question, the innocence in the boy's voice echoing through him. What if they failed? It was a possibility that hung heavy, almost suffocating. But as Thomas looked at the sea of faces around him, many had lit up with passion and conviction, just like Gabriel. They were ready to stand tall together, and he knew he could feel it deep in his bones that this was their moment. Gabriel, Thomas spoke softly, kneeling to meet the boy's gaze. We won't fail if we stand together. This moment, it's about more than us. It's bigger. The boy nodded, his fierce spirit unwavering as if fueled by that resolve. The chant grew louder, each voice a testament to their shared story. We are not invisible. We are not alone. The exhilaration was intoxicating, and Thomas reveled in it, their camaraderie blazing like a beacon against the darkness of social injustice. But just as hope spread through the crowd, a darker presence loomed from behind the police line. A group of officers shifted, alert and prepared. With a single gesture from their leader, they formed a wedge, intent on dispersing the gathering. The realization slammed into Thomas. The moment was fragile, the tension in the air now thick with uncertainty. Stay calm. Michael's voice rang out. Remember, we're here to have our voices heard, not to start a riot. The intensity was palpable as people reacted to the officers' movements, some stepping back in fear, others tightening their grip on loved ones, finding strength in each other. Let us show them our strength through our voices. Thomas shouted, trying to rally the crowd. This isn't just a protest. It's a movement. Our movement. Gabriel's small hand squeezed his tightly as the first officer broke the line, taking a few steps forward. The heartbeats around Thomas echoed with uncertainty. Would they stand their ground? Would they be heard? Suddenly, a voice caught the crowd's attention. Anna, a young woman with a spirit as fiery as her red hair, stepped forward. What do we want? Her voice cracked, but her presence was steady. Justice. The crowd roared back. When do we want it? Anna pressed. Now, came the response, thunderously unified as the rallying cries reverberated off the walls of nearby buildings. A sense of triumph flickered in Thomas's heart. Maybe they could do this. Maybe they could shift the narrative together. He took a deep breath, glancing at the police officer who seemed to hesitate. There was a flicker of something in the officer's eyes, a hint of understanding. Then, before Thomas could process the shift, he saw it, a family in the crowd, their anxious faces filled with concern. A mother cradling a younger child, fear evident in her eyes. They had come hoping for change but were now teetering on the edge of panic. In a moment of clarity, he realized that this was more than just a struggle of voices. It was also a human struggle, families, hopes and dreams hanging in the balance. Listen, Thomas shouted, voice breaking through the tension. These voices are full of hope. They represent families, children, and every single story that needs to be told. We can't let fear drown them out. The crowd rallied, erupting with the simple truth. Hope! 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 But as the chant rose, the officer raised his baton, his stance shifting into one of authority. Stand down now or I will call for backup. His voice turned menacing, a reminder of the fragile line they danced on. Stay with me, everyone, Thomas pleaded. But he felt the pulse of anxiety creeping in. The stakes were higher than ever. What happened next could rewrite their stories forever or silence them in an instant. As tension snapped in the air like a taut string, Thomas's heart raced. Would they find a way to communicate their humanity, or would the darkness of fear swallow them whole? Gabriel looked up, squaring his shoulders. We won't let them stop us, right? The question hung there, an unfinished note delicately balancing between hope and fear. What would it take to truly be heard? Was risking everything worth it if it meant standing for their truth? As that thought settled, Thomas knew they were on the brink of a decision that would define them forever. Thomas's heart thudded in his chest. The world around them felt electric with uncertainty. He scanned the faces of the crowd, each one alive with a mix of fear and conviction. The weight of that moment, the lives hanging in the balance, urged him on. He tightened his grip around Gabriel's hand, hoping to lend the boy some of his courage. The police officer took another step forward, eyes steely. It was a look that sent shivers through many in the crowd. Some faces turned pale, some glanced around, unsure of what to do next. Thomas felt the urge to pull Gabriel away, to shield the boy from what might come. But no, they couldn't. He back down now. "Stay. Please, we are not here to hurt anyone," Thomas shouted, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "We are human beings and we deserve to be heard." Gabriel echoed him with a small quivering voice, "We just want to be seen." That single phrase sliced through the chaos. Many in the crowd repeated it, their voices rising in a strange harmony, trembling yet fierce. The officers hesitated, looking at each other with uncertainty, momentarily unsure of their next move. Then suddenly Anna, emboldened by the chant, began to walk forward, her fiery hair illuminated by the afternoon sun. "If you want to silence us, do it. But know this, we're not going anywhere." The determination in her voice ignited a wave of courage that rippled through the group. With renewed strength they started chanting again. "We are not invisible. We are not alone." Watching the scene unfold, Thomas felt something shift in the air, an undeniable energy wrapping around them. The officers shifted their weight, some appearing to soften, while others clenched their fists. The one who had threatened them lowered his baton slightly, and for a moment, it seemed as though the palpable fear had begun to drain away. But it was only a moment. Before Thomas could process it further, a loud crack rang out, a single shot fired in the air. Gasps erupted from the crowd, every heart freezing in shock. "No!" Thomas shouted, instinctively throwing himself in front of Gabriel, shielding him. The collective fear surged, panic igniting within the crowd like a wildfire. People screamed, some began to push against each other in a desperate attempt to flee, while others stood frozen in disbelief. "Stay together." Michael's voice pierced through the chaos. "Don't panic. We have to stay united." Thomas, still holding Gabriel tightly, felt tears prick at his eyes as he witnessed the very real threat unfolding. This wasn't just a display of power. It was a fragment of their worst nightmares. "We can't let them break us," he shouted again, desperately trying to maintain control, his voice strained. "We have to believe in each other." As Thomas looked around, eyes wild with panic began to settle on one another, finding reassurance in shared strength. There were whispers of solidarity, a fleeting sense of purpose that ignited once more. Just as the atmosphere of despair threatened to consume them entirely, the officer who had hesitated took a step forward. His baton lowered to his side. "Stop, just talk to us." Hope flickered within Thomas, and he turned to Gabriel, who looked up with wide eyes, a mix of fear and determination. "Do you think we can?" the boy asked, voice trembling. "Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to listen," Thomas replied, his heart pounding. A murmur traveled through the crowd, questions hanging in the air. Could they really turn this around? Was it possible to have a conversation amidst the looming threat? Then silence. The breath of the crowd collectively held, waiting for a response from either side. "Now's our chance," Thomas whispered to Gabriel, crouching closer as the tension built around them. "Let us take it." Would they find that courage? Would their voices truly matter? The pivotal moment felt like the world itself balanced on a tightrope, and they were waiting to see if their united strength would be enough. What awaited them on the other side of this uncertainty? The silence felt heavy, like a thick blanket wrapped around Thomas and Gabriel. Everyone around them seemed stuck between fear and hope. The police officer, still a steady presence with his weapon lowered, looked conflicted. His expression softened just a fraction as he faced the crowd. "Let us talk then," he said, his voice steady but not unkind. Thomas took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down. He stood tall, hoping to channel the bravery he felt from Gabriel's small, yet firm grip on his hand. "We want to be heard," he started, his words careful but strong. "We need to talk about how we can support one another." We can't keep living like this, divided. As he spoke, Gabriel felt a surge of warmth in his chest. Something deep inside told him this was a crucial moment, a shift in the tide. He noticed people in the crowd start to step forward, emboldened by Thomas's words. Anna nodded, her fiery hair glowing even brighter in the warm light. "We're just trying to survive," she added. Her voice was sure and unwavering. "We want to contribute, to be part of this community." The officer glanced back at his colleagues, who remained tense but increasingly bewildered by the unfolding scene. He seemed torn between following orders and sensing something genuine within the crowd. The sounds of shuffling feet and whispered conversations filled the air, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the officers didn't appear as menacing. Thomas noticed the shift, small yet noticeable. "We just want a chance," he pressed, looking directly at the officer, who held his gaze. "We're not your enemies. We're your neighbors, your friends." A murmur washed over the crowd, the words echoing back to Thomas like a swell of support. He could feel the energy building, an undeniable unity emerging from the shared vulnerability. Gabriel, emboldened by Thomas, stepped away slightly. "Can you please help us?" he asked, his small voice ringing out clear above the soft murmurs. "We just want to be treated like people. We want to be seen." The officer's brow furrowed. There was something raw and innocent in Gabriel's plea that seemed to crack through the hardened shell of authority. The crowd held its breath, heartbeats sinking in anxious anticipation. A flicker of realization crossed the officer's face, as if he was starting to comprehend the magnitude of what they were truly asking. "You want to be treated like people," he repeated, his words thoughtful. Around him, some of the fellow officers shifted uncomfortably, weighing their positions as they looked to their leader for an indication of what to do next. "Yes." The voices of the crowd intertwined, echoing Gabriel's plea. "We are not invisible." A moment of clarity broke through the chaos. The officers, once rigid and confrontational, temporarily softened. They exchanged glances, indecision painted across their faces. Thomas could feel hope swelling like a tidal wave, stronger than any fear that had threatened to drown them just moments before. "All right," the officer finally said, taking a deep breath. "Let us find a way to start this conversation." The crowd erupted, cheers and shouts of exhilaration cutting through the heavy air. Many hugged each other, overwhelmed by a rush of relief and unexpected triumph. Thomas looked down at Gabriel, who was grinning, wide-eyed and radiant. Yet, amid the celebration, doubt clung to Thomas's thoughts. What did this communication really mean? Would their words bring real change, or would it fizzle away like so many promises before? "Stay close to me, Gabriel," Thomas murmured, grounding himself in the moment, yet holding on to the uncertainty gnawing at the edges of his joys. The officer gestured for calm, motioning for the crowd to gather around him. Thomas knew the battle was far from over. Dialogue was only the first step. The hard work of building trust and dismantling barriers still lay ahead. Would they find common ground? Would their voices rise strong enough to break through the years of division? In that charged atmosphere, anything felt possible. And terrifying all at once. The crowd began to settle, the noise of celebration tapering off as people shifted their attention toward the officer. He took a deep breath, his shoulders squared and his posture firm yet less rigid than before. The tension that had built up in the air slowly receded, replaced by a flicker of cautious optimism. "Thank you for speaking out," he said, looking out over the crowd. "I know things have been rough. We don't always get it right. But it sounds like we have a chance now to change this together." His voice, once a tool of authority, transformed into a bridge meant to connect. Gabriel's small hand tightened around Thomas's. His heart raced. This was what they had been fighting for, a chance to be seen and heard, to say out loud what had long been hidden in shadows. "Let us be straightforward," the officer continued, his tone shifting into something warmer. "I want us to sit down as a community and address your needs." The crowd surged forward again, a chorus of emotions flooding their faces: relief, disbelief, hope. Thomas could barely process the change. Just moments before, they had been at the brink of despair. And now it felt like a door was opening. Anna stepped forward, her eyes bright. "When can we start?" she asked, her voice steady, as if the very fabric of their lives was woven into those words. "We want to be part of finding solutions. We need to be heard." The officer nodded, jotted something down on a notepad, and looked up again. "How about a community meeting? This Friday at the community center? I'll make sure we have resources there, he replied, glancing at the other officers, who appeared to be listening now, and not just standing guard. A wave of agreement flowed through the crowd. People began to chatter excitedly. Thomas felt the weight lifting ever so slightly. It felt like hope. But the warmth also tangled with the apprehension that still clutched his insides. Gabriel looked up at Thomas, his innocent eyes sparkling. "Do you think this will really work?" he whispered. The doubt lingered unspoken in the air around them. "I hope so," Thomas replied honestly, kneeling to meet Gabriel's gaze. "But it's going to take every one of us. We need to show them we're serious, that we really want to help." As the moment unfolded, Thomas caught sight of something at the back of the crowd, a worried mother holding her child close, her face lined with the stories of struggle. Each story seemed to echo Benjamin's plea, each face reflecting the silent wish for understanding, for connection. "That's why we've got to keep pushing," he continued, standing back up. "This is our chance to show them what we can do together." Just then, a buzz erupted from the outskirts as someone stepped forward, an older gentleman in a worn-out jacket. His voice trembled yet rang out clearly as he called, "What about those of us who have been here? The businesses, the homes that were taken? Can we even heal that pain?" The room quieted again, the weight of his question thundering. This was real. The cracks in the foundation of the community were deep. Could they really begin to heal? "Those conversations need to happen too," the officer replied slowly, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. "But it'll take time. We need to understand each other's stories first." Thomas's heart ached at the enormity of it all, but he felt something shift within him. They could be the ones to start that healing. He turned to Gabriel once more, whose little face remained serious but hopeful. It struck Thomas then, the power of their voices, the weight of their stories coming together. They could become catalysts for change, but the journey would be messy, complicated, and far from easy. They would need to delve into fears, address pain, and break through barriers. And deep down, Thomas wondered, were they truly ready to bare their souls in front of one another? As the crowd began to disperse, buoyed by the faint glimmer of what could be, a troubling thought clung to him. What if some wounds wouldn't heal? What if the past was too powerful to overcome? The next meeting loomed ahead, less than 48 hours away. Would they stand strong together when it counted? Would people like Gabriel be safe during these discussions, or would old divides push them further apart? As he looked around at the flickering faces, excitement mingled with fear. Thomas felt the fear crystallize into focus. They were poised for a reckoning of sorts, and it could change everything, but could they face that truth in such a vulnerable moment? The days leading up to the community meeting felt like a tightrope walk for Thomas. Each moment seemed stretched thin, filled with a blend of anticipation and anxiety. The little things that usually went unnoticed now held weight. Gabriel's laughter, Anna's determined stride, and the hesitant nods from the neighbor down the street who had once been so distant. On the evening before the meeting, Thomas sat at their small kitchen table, his fingers tracing the worn surface. The clatter of pots and pans from the adjacent room reached his ears as Gabriel helped Anna prepare dinner. The warmth, the clamor, and the scent of cumin mixed with roasted vegetables washed over him, momentarily calming the storm in his heart. But then Thomas remembered the weighty conversations that loomed ahead. What if the air that filled their home with laughter could turn into tense silence? What if the hope that sparkled in Gabriel's eyes was crushed under layers of resentment and unresolved pain? "Dad," Gabriel's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "What should I say tomorrow?" The boy's small face was earnest, yet Thomas could see the flicker of uncertainty behind his innocent eyes. He knelt down so they were at eye level. "You speak from your heart, bud. That's all that matters." Gabriel nodded, though still unsure. But what if they don't listen? Thomas felt a lump in his throat. The fear that clung to them both was so palpable. "Then we keep speaking until they do. Remember, it's not just about words. It's about us all standing together." They tucked Gabriel into bed later, and as Thomas sat on the edge, he felt that familiar ache of love and worry. How could he shield his son from the harsh realities of life? "You'll be brave tomorrow, right?" he asked, giving a reassuring squeeze of Gabriel's hand. "Yeah, Dad, I'll be brave." The little boy's voice was thick with sleep but confident, almost encouraging. The next day arrived far too soon. The sky hung heavy with gray clouds that threatened rain. as if reflecting the weight on everyone's hearts. When they approached the community center, the building loomed like an ancient fortress, each brick a reminder of history, struggle, and the looming conversations ahead as people filtered in. The energy split into cautious optimism and simmering apprehension. Conversations buzzed low like distant thunder, but Thomas could feel the undercurrents of something more profound. This was a moment of truth, raw and unfiltered. He took Gabriel's hand as they entered the main room. Anna stayed close, her presence a fortress of strength. The officer from the other day stood at the front, scanning the crowd, his expression serious but oddly inviting. "Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight," he began, but his voice was swallowed by a mixture of murmurs and shifting in the seats. The weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the air as more community members shared their fears and frustrations. The dynamic began to shift. Thomas couldn't help but notice an elderly woman with trembling hands speaking of loss, her voice breaking as she recounted nights spent wondering where her son had gone. Others chimed in, sharing their pain, their histories, their dreams for something better. When Gabriel's moment arrived, he walked to the front, every eye fixed on him. The room fell silent, anticipation humming in the air. Thomas held his breath, watching his son's small stature contrasted against the backdrop of so many troubled faces. Gabriel cleared his throat. "I'm scared, but I want to help." His voice was shaking, yet it held the kind of clarity that made hearts ache. "I just want everyone to be friends, and to feel safe." As the words left his lips, something shifted in the room. Thomas felt tears prickle at his eyes. The timid honesty of Gabriel's hope seemed to resonate with a deep yearning beneath the surface, a longing for connection that had been buried too long. Yet, as applause broke out, he couldn't shake the foreboding that seeped in. What if this moment, so tender and hopeful, would unravel into something darker? What if the past could not be swept away by the innocence of a child's wish? Suddenly, a voice shattered the moment. "But what about the truth? What about the reality of our situation?" A younger man, full of fury and confusion, stood indignant at the back. The tension in the room lurked like a predator, waiting to strike. Thomas exchanged glances with Anna and Gabriel. He could feel the air change, crackle with renewed urgency. Would this meeting become a turning point or a broken promise? Tomorrow would hold more than words. It would demand honesty, bravery, and a reckoning of their pasts. Would they be ready to face what lay ahead? Would the healing begin, or would new wounds fester in the light of grievances too long buried? And as the shadows deepened, that crucial question loomed, echoing quietly in the depths of Thomas's mind. Were they truly prepared to confront the stories that could divide them once more? The day of the community meeting arrived, the air thick with anticipation. Thomas could feel the weight of a million eyes on him and Gabriel, as they stood at the entrance of the community center. His son's small hand gripped his tightly, an anchor grounding his swirling thoughts. Inside, the room felt electric. Faces filled with a mix of hope and anxiety turned toward the front where the officer stood, ready to facilitate. It was now or never. There was a rustling of chairs, soft murmurs, and the kind of tension that could snap at any moment. "Welcome, everyone," the officer said, his voice steadying the crowd. "Tonight, we're here to have honest conversations about our community and how we can support each other." Voices began to emerge from the audience, sharing stories woven with pain and resilience. A mother spoke of sleepless nights worrying for her son's future. A grandparent described the changing neighborhood, where once cheerful streets felt heavy with fear. Each voice echoed with a shared history, a collective scar that needed to heal. And then there was Gabriel. The moment came where he had to step forward. Standing taller than he ever had, he grasped the microphone, his heart fluttering. "I'm Gabriel," he said, voice shaking but strong. "I want to help." Silence enveloped the room as all eyes honed in on him, the innocence of a child shining against the backdrop of heavy burdens. Thomas watched, pride swelling but tinged with worry. "I just want everyone to feel safe to be friends," the boy continued, his words simple yet powerful, echoing a vulnerability that made the adults lean in, their defenses quaking under the weight of his sincerity. Applause erupted, but with it came a voice from the back, sharp and grating. "But how? What about the real problems we face?" Tension rippled through the crowd as a young man, raw with frustration, stood. It was a valid point, and Thomas felt the surfacing anxiety. Would this supposed moment of unity crack open old wounds? Let us hear him out. Someone shouted, and Gabriel's eyes shifted, meeting his father's gaze. What would happen next? The officer nodded, allowing the young man to express his concerns, which spilled forth like a torrent. We've been ignored for too long. It's not just about feeling safe. It's about the fact that we're struggling. Our families are being pushed out. Thomas felt the undercurrents of tension surge like waves threatening to rip through the gathering. Discontent thickened the air. Would it all collapse, leaving them shattered in the very moment they sought to unite? Gabriel stepped forward once more, his resolution shining like a beacon. I believe we can make changes together. Not just words but real help. Heads turned, curiosity sparking in their hesitant expressions. He had tapped into something profound: hope amidst anger, and a need for connection amidst despair. If we don't try, then who will? Gabriel added, passion igniting in his small frame. The reactions began to spread through the space, softening brows and shifting perspectives. More voices joined in, each one building upon the fragile connection they were weaving. They spoke of anger, frustration, dreams, and the aching desire for belonging. As the discussions flourished, Thomas felt the heaviness lighten. People began to see each other, truly see. It was magical, like they were peeling back the layers of fear and hesitation, revealing vulnerability instead. The end of the night, they chose to schedule regular meetings, an open forum to share frustrations and aspirations. They made a promise to come together again and again. There were still years of hurt to mend, but something essential had shifted. As the crowd dispersed, the atmosphere was alive with cautious optimism. Thomas knelt down to Gabriel, who still glowed with excitement. We did it, Dad. We really did. Thomas pulled him in for a tight embrace, tears prickling his eyes. Yes, buddy, we did, but remember, this is just the beginning. And as they walked home under a sky speckled with stars, Thomas felt a fire spark within him. He had witnessed the transformation. A homeless boy who could light up the darkest corners of the world had sparked change within a millionaire's heart. They were not just working towards something, they were building a family, a community. That night they went to bed whispering dreams, a shared warmth knitting them closer than ever. They would have trials ahead. The road to change was not easy, but they would walk it together, hand in hand. Now it was time for action. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to not miss out on exclusive stories like this. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread the message of hope. Comment below your feelings about this ending. What did you think? And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your voice matters. Let us keep this momentum going.